This your boy Darko, and welcome to a new edition of Kindles and Kicks. So I decided to start a new channel in 2024, and this is my first official video. This is like my first top 10 anything. This is my top 10 reads of 2023. And yeah, I know I'm like 15 days late, but whatever, I'm getting it out there. Plus I like to allow books to sit with me for a while after I read them. I don't, I can't start doing top tens the beginning of January and I just finished something like December 31st. You get it? All right. So here we go. Back to the matter at hand. Perfected is perfected. I'm gonna let him understand. Shout out to Snoop. So the first book on my list is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clark. So although this wasn't a 5-star read for me, it's one of the most memorable books I think I've ever read in my entire life. Like, Susanna Clark has a way with words that just blows me away. And the world she builds and crafts here is so ethereal, it's so intriguing and so mysterious, very spooky, and it's very classic literature. So if you like, classic stories, I think you would enjoy Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Now, the only reason I didn't give it 5 stars, despite how much I love the book, is that there are like footnotes because it's very much written like a historic tale, and it has like footnotes that you can reference in the back, and so that was a bit of a slaw with me. It kind of broke the immersion at times, but overall, I've loved the story she crafted between these two opposing magicians, and I really liked how she touched on racism here. With a black character named Stephen Black, oddly enough, who is now one of my favorite characters in fantasy. Like, she didn't beat you over the head with it, but she made you pay attention to it. So great book. I recommend it to anybody who is a fan of just classic literature that's well written. Let's see. Next on my list is The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence, which is, like you can see that behind me on my bookshelf. So, this book was much talked about last year. And I've been a fan of Mark Lawrence for a while. I was introduced to him way back, with Prince York and that series, which, the name escapes me. But, that one captivated me immediately. Like, that was my introduction to grimdark. Like, not Joe Abercrombie, like so many other people, even though I love Joe Abercrombie. But Mark Lawrence is my introduction to grimdark. However, I didn't read anything else after that series until The Book That Wouldn't Burn. And when I started reading it was difficult for me to get into because I was not a fan of the first POV. However, once I got to the second POV, I was immediately sucked in. The story was great. If I could say anything to describe it, I would call it genre bending because it's fantasy, it's science fiction, it's horror, it's thriller, it's mystery, it's romance. Like, Mark Lawrence somehow was able to construct a book, a narrative that includes every possible literary genre you could think of. Like, to me, like, he hit all marks. And I understand, this book may not be for everyone, but I really enjoyed it. Particularly the setting. Like, I mean, as a book lover, what's a better setting than a library? And, the themes of, time travel and parallel universes, it's just, to me, it was just great, a great experience. And I definitely look forward to the next book in the series. See, next up, We Are Legion by Dennis Taylor. So this is a science fiction book. I do love sci-fi. And I'm surprised I don't hear as much about the Bobbyverse series as I did a couple of years ago. But this story was just such a fun ride. It's witty, it's entertaining, it's fast paced. It's a little bit of hard science, but not enough. I think you don't need a degree in physics to kind of grasp what's going on. But a guy, his consciousness is transferred into this entity whose job is to go out and investigate the universe through exploration and replication. So just think of the replicators, which only fans of Stargate SG-1 will understand. But if you're a fan of Stargate SG-1, there was these creatures called the replicators, and that was their like they replicated and went over the universe and just tried to destroy everything. So this picture the replicators, but they're all like tech bros, like super smart physics geniuses who, invented something, got rich, but, something happens to them where their consciousness is transferred out of their body. And now they're on a mission for the government to find out more about the universe. So it's great. It's a great story. I think anyone who likes the Murderbot Diaries or like Andy Weir, The Martian, I think would really, really like this book. Um, Next up after this, I have Of Darkness and Light by Ryan Cahill. So Ryan Cahill was kind of like on my periphery. So, I knew about him and his work, but I had no intention of really reading it anytime soon. But I was gifted the first book in the Bound and Broken series by Matt at Matt's Book Reviews as a library tier Patreon subscriber. He gives all of us a book like every few months or so. And and it's really great because he goes, he looks at your reading history and kind of picks a book that's tailored to your liking. And so he selected this one for me. And when I initially read it, it was very familiar. Anybody who has read Wheel of Time will immediately see the similarities. Some people may find it enduring, others may find it enraging. Me, I found it enduring. It was familiar. It wasn't like I was going home, but maybe like going to the neighboring town, seeing some friends I may have went to high school with, not necessarily grew up with, but had some classes with, because there were a lot of themes, character traits, and tropes that I had grown to love reading The Wheel of Time. A lot of people also compare it to Aragorn, which is a series I have not read, but still I think it's a very well crafted story, and anybody in classic fantasy would love it. So now the second book in the Bound and the Broken series, I call it The New Great Hunt. Only because, similar to Robert Jordan, when The Eye of the World was released, a lot of people critically, compared it to Lord of the Rings, said it borrowed a lot from that. And Robert Jordan was like, oh, okay, I did, but now let me show you what I can do. And so from the Great Hunt on, Robert Jordan did his thing. He showed that he was his own person. He come up with his own narratives, his own mythologies. And Ryan Cahill did this with Of Darkness and Light. In the first book of The Bound and Broken, it was very much Aragorn, in Wheel of Time. You could see how much he borrowed from those series. But he took it to a totally astronomically, exponentially expansive scale in the dark of Darkness and Light. It's like, Brian Cahill clearly is a pupil of the greats, and it really shows in the second book, and even more so in the third book of War and Ruin, which I am reading right now. And like each book not only gets longer but more epic and even better. So just thank you, Ryan Cahill. Please continue to write. Let's see. The next book is Howling Dark by Christopher Rocchio. Now, Christopher Rocchio is the first author whose Kickstarter I supported before reading anything by them. And the reason I did this is because I saw so many booktubers lauding Sun Eater series, um, Goodreads, blogs. But the more I learned about the series, the more I recognized it was right up my alley. I was like, I know I'm going to like it, and that's never happened to me before. Like I just knew I was going to like it. So I got the first book, Empire of Silence. I read it and I didn't like it. I loved it. I mean, from the beginning to the end. Now, a lot of people say this is the weakest book in the series. I've not read through all the books yet. I've just read Empire of Silence and Howling Dark. And Howling Dark, yeah, is definitely a step up. But I gave 5 stars to Empire of Silence. Um, so when I heard that Howling Dark was even better, and then I read it, I was blown away. I was like, how expansive can this world get? How great can a story become? How developed, can these characters get? And then the deeper delving into the Seosin, which is the antagonistic alien race in the series, was so great. The fight scenes, the dialogue. I mean, gosh, like Hadrian Marlowe. Like I just love Hadrian Marlowe. Like everybody, Sun Eater. Sun Eater's the future. Um, After that, I have to give it to Dark Age by Pierce Brown, which is like right there. You see in my hodgepodge of books. I do have Dark Age. Um, Now last year was like the year of Red Rising for me. I read the entire Red Rising series. Well, what consists of the Red Rising series at this moment, all the way through up until Lightbringer. And I know a lot of people like Lightbringer was like their book of the year. They loved it. It was awesome. And I agree with all of that. I voted it as book of the year on Goodreads, for 2023. However, like Dark Age to me was better. I enjoyed it more. Because it was such a huge step up in Pierce Brown's writing ability um and his like narrative construction, his character development, and so and like the stakes, which is crazy. When you think you've reached the limit, like nothing else crazy could happen, Pierce Brown just like whips you, smacks you in the face. Like, oh, you thought I was done? You thought it was over? No, just wait. And so, to me, I don't know if he like went away on a retreat, but like the jump in the level of writing, in Dark Age from like all his previous books was just remarkable. And to me, Lightbringer just continues that. Like Lightbringer was not a step up. It just like it was a continuance of the greatness that was Dark Age. Absolutely loved it. Look forward to the final book in the series. It's now, I think I'm gonna have to give it like my favorite sci-fi series at the moment, but that might change as I read further into Sun Eater, and I'm thinking it will. So, Pierce Brown. Okay, now we're in the final four. And the first in the final four is Dune by Frank Herbert. Now, I don't need to say anything at all about this book. Anyone who reads science fiction or fantasy is well aware of Dune. However, what I will say is when I attempted to read this many years ago, I could not get into it. But now that I have matured as an individual and also as a reader, when I read it this time, I had a better appreciation for the story that Herbert crafted, as well as a better appreciation for the influence it had, not only on science fiction, but in fantasy as well. Like you can see, a lot of the themes and narratives other major series have borrowed from Dune. And I wasn't aware of this until I read it last year. And so, I gave it 5 stars. I do want to eventually like reread it because that's definitely one of those books where you don't get everything on just one read. So I want to reread it and then continue on with the rest of the series to see, how it pans out. Um, the next on the list is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. So this was a reread for me, but it's been a long time since I read it. And initially, when I read it the first time, I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. So now that I matured as a reader, I wanted to revisit it to see if I enjoyed it just as much as I did the first time. And I enjoyed it even more. Um, Blake Crouch to me is this. He's just such a great palate cleanser. In my opinion, I've read The Wayward Pines. That's and which I enjoyed as well. The TV show too, um, and like just I don't even want to say anything about this story because these are one of the a book that you just need to go in blind. But the themes of like sacrifice and love and possibilities and missed opportunities and like what would you do if you could change your past or your future, like it's just a lot of questions are asked in this book and touched on, and I just I really really enjoyed the story. So before I talk about the top two, I want to, of course, insert an honorable mention. And that honorable mention goes to The Blackest Heart by Brian Lee Durfee. Um, Great story, great book. Brian Lee Durfee, as you know, is a booktuber. And so he, I think it was Stephen King, don't quote me on this. It was somebody who said to be a great author, you need to be a great reader. And I don't think there is anybody in the world who exemplifies or illustrates that more than Brian Lee Durfee. And it shows in the way he writes. He almost cracked the top 10, and I'm like, ah. But, hopefully, next year he will, because I plan to finish up the series next year. I've only read the first two in the Five Warrior Angels trilogy, but The Blackest Heart, there is I mean, the book is great for a lot of reasons, but the reason I want to give it an honorable mention is because it has one of the dopest, sickest, illest, craziest, insaniest battle scenes at the end of the book that I've ever read in my entire life. And like when I read fantasy books, I usually don't care much about the battle scenes. I'm more about character development, plot development, world building, like magic systems. Like if I had to list all the things I look for in a great fantasy book, battle scenes would be at the bottom of the list. So like when booktubers say this was a great battle scene or this author really knows how to write a great battle scene, I'm like, okay, I'll take your word for it because I could not care less. However, Brian Lee Durfee made me care about battle scenes. I don't even want to go into details of why I like the battle scene because it would just ruin it. Like, because you would go in like expecting something, like no, like you need to read this book and just experience the battle scene at the end of the book for yourself. It was unlike anything I've ever read in fantasy. Dope. Okay. Now, we're at the top two. The final two. The championship. All right? Second place goes to The Will of the Many by James Islington. It's an Islington. So I had heard of James Islington in the Lycanius trilogy, but it was not on my TBR. I had no interest in really reading it, at least not anytime soon. But The Will of the Many came on my radar because so many people were talking about it. And then it just like, it seemed to kind of check all the boxes of what I like, as far as coming of age. It was in a school, like, I mean, Harry Potter is like my favorite series ever. So, it's very Harry Potterish. So, I decided to check it out. And I am so glad I did. Like, to me, this story is the best written novel in like years. Like, something that took typical tropes and reinvented them and applied them in ways that they have not been applied before. So to me, anyone who likes Harry Potter like me needs to read this book. So any Harry Potter fan, please read this book. Percy Jackson fans, like, read this book. I'm not saying it's YA. However, it has those themes that Harry Potter and Percy Jackson fans would appreciate, but it's still very much adult because it does go into like deeper themes such as information suppression and government sanctioned oppression. It's like it gets deep, and so I recommend it to everybody. I mean, I loved it. Will of the Many like almost made my book of the year. However, it would have happened had I not read The Realm of the Elderlings this year, or at least finished it. I read part of it in late 2022, finished it earlier this year. And if I had my way, like all slots would just go to, multiple slots anyway would go to The Realm of the Elderlings. But I'm going to focus on Assassin's Fate. I mean, Robin Hobb, I don't even know how to describe how much I love her writing. Like, she is not just an author. She is like a poet. She is a literary genius. I mean, like, Robin Hobb can write anything, and it is top notch. Because I know a lot of people complain about the Rainwild Chronicles, but even Robin Hobb at her, now I'm not even going to say worst, at her least best, it's better than most authors at their best. She is just remarkable. And Assassin's Fate had the most perfect ending, not only to a series, but to a single novel that I've ever read in my entire existence on this planet. I mean, like I cried, but like it was cries, it was tears of sadness, it was tears of joy, there were tears of hope, and I've never had any author or book evoke that kind of emotion outside of Robin Hobb. The Realm of the Elderlings, it was on my bucket list of series that I want to finish before I die. So hopefully that's not tomorrow. It's Realm of the Elderlings, Malazan, and Wheel of Time. Even though I've read majority of Wheel of Time, I have not finished it. So I was so glad to check this off my list. And I was also proud of myself because it was the first series I've ever read that long, and I was not sure I was going to finish it, but I did. And when I did, the journey was more than worth it. Every minute, hour I spent reading, every page turned, came together in such an incredible way that I don't know how it could have been ended better. I don't know. I don't think there was any way she could have ended this more perfectly. So I just want to, from the bottom of my heart, thank Robin Hall for crafting such a beautiful and emotional story that I will remember for the rest of my life. Okay, that's it. That is my top 10 reads of 2023. I'm thinking of doing, reading plans for 2024, but I am so fickle when it comes to reading plans because I'll have an intention to read something and something else will catch my attention and I'm like, I think I'd rather read that. So I'll think on it. Anyway, subscribe, like, comment below. I'm curious to know what your favorite reads are 2023. If you agree with my picks or you think I'm absolutely insane, you can let me know that as well. In any case, this is Darko, Kindles and Kicks, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.